name is Jakub Absalon and I've been managing a translation company for 20 years. I'm a great fan of new technology and I have a PhD in machine translation post-editing. I'm sure you know what machine translation post-editing is, but I would like to ask you if you have ever had a customer approach you with a request for machine translation post-editing, and when you ask them what quality of output text they need, they said full post-editing, meaning that the translation should be close to the quality of human translation. If so, maybe you also have thoughts about what is the difference between translation, so-called human translation, and so-called full post-editing. Let's compare the process of creating a translation in both cases. So in both cases, creator is professional translator, both in human translation and also in full post-editing. And regarding translation resources, there is also translation memory used in both cases. Translation memory, I'm sure you know, helps translators to be consistent and faster by leveraging 100% and fuzzy matches from translation memory. In human translation, 100% matches are pre-translated usually, and fuzzy matches are available for suggestions for translator. In full post-editing, 100 matches from translation memory are also pre-translated, but fuzzy matches are not available when we create the first text, first translation. Let's have a look on another resource, and it's term-base. Term-base helps translator to use correct and consistent terminology. In human translation, term-base is available during creation process and for quality assurance. In full post-editing, if a generic machine translation engine is used, it does not reflect terminology when creates translation, but it is available for quality assurance. Regarding usage of machine translation, yes, we know that machine translated text helps translators create translation faster and get fast and creative suggestions for translation. So when we use PEMT in human translation, it is available as a suggestions if translation memory matches are lower than 75% usually. And in full post-editing, whole text is pre-translated and needs to be edited, but we do not know how much of editing is necessary. And let's have a look also on the quality requirements. In human translation, it's clear that it must be perfect because it's so-called human translation. And what about full post-editing? It should be almost human translation quality. Okay, so the whole difference is that we call one result human translation and the other almost human translation, but nobody knows what the word almost means. The text is translated by the same person using the same tools, and the required quality is actually the same. So from my point of view, the only difference is the price for the translation. I believe you notice that I am not disputing the benefit of machine translation, nor I am not saying that post-editing doesn't exist. Post-editing is the removal of critical errors from the empty output, assuming a precisely defined quality requirements. The translator or post-editor have precise instructions on which errors to notice and correct. So I would propose to divide the translation from the point of view of usage of machine translation into following categories. First, we have machine translation, where we have a raw output from machine translation and no one has edited this translation, so we cannot guarantee its quality. Then we have post-edited machine translation, where empty pre-translated text is edited by translator. The translator removes precisely defined errors according to the client's requirements. Such a translation should not contain critical errors on 90%, but in order to meet the requirements of low price and high speed, there is still a certain chance that some non-stylistic errors will occur, even if the risk is significantly lower than with machine translation. And then we have human translation. A text translated by a professional translator who, in his work, uses up-to-date translation resources, including translation memories, term bases, and machine translation. As for the price, it's natural that machine translation is the cheapest form of translation, as it is the fastest, has the lowest input cost for creating translation, and above all, no one is responsible for translated text. Post-edited machine translation follows, since the reason for using such a service is the price reduction and faster delivery time. The responsibility for the results is already transferred to the translator, but it should definitely not to be the same as with a regular translation, human translation. In the case of ordinary translation, human translation, price is always negotiable, and the translator can take into the account repetitive text or 100% matches and fuzzy matches, but also in case of evidently good machine translation result, the assumed faster pace of translation can be taken into account. So a discount for empty could be possible. In contrast to 100% matches from translation memory, the machine translation quality is based only on an assumption, and therefore even the possible agreed discount is only based on estimate. Yes, so it's not based on some real facts. Or it could be based also on a sample of pre-translated text. However, even the sample does not tell us exactly how the following text will behave in machine translation engine. However, we are already used to similar estimates in our industry for discounts for fuzzy matches from translation memory, where we also cannot predict how much the fuzzy match will be helpful to the translator. According to the several surveys, most translators use machine translation as one of the tools in their work, and I see nothing wrong with that. The quality of their work should be evaluated by quality of final translation, not by the way they work on it. They mainly use generic machine translation engines in their work. If the customer provides his own specialized machine translation engine for translation, which achieves significantly better results, it is appropriate to claim a certain financial compensation for this service. However, we shall use so-called win-win principle, which brings benefit to both parties, to both sides, to translator and to clients. If the customer uses commonly available generic empty tool, which is often also available for translator or to translator, compensation for such pre-translation of text is not appropriate up to me. Conclusion: please do not question usage of machine translation, as many translators did with the translation memory technology a few years ago. MT is here. It is an excellent mate and helper for translators as well as for customers who need fast and cheap translation. However, Let's defend ourselves against trying to force us to take responsibility for so-called translation, and let's defend ourselves against someone calling a human translation for which we are fully responsible. Don't let them to call it machine translation or post-editing of machine translation just because someone used a pre-translation function or pre-translate button. Thus, I don't know if it wouldn't be better to call this service full post-editing instead of full post-editing.